afternoon, Corrine.
Hello. I just was trying to write you say it's trying to connect.
Yeah, it will do it. Awesome. Well, I'm so glad that you were able to join us today because you are the topic of conversation, your story, and we're going to get to know all about you. We met last November when you reached out, and actually, I think I reached out to you to talk about your book, Mindfulness for Dancers, to get to know you a little bit, and I'm really excited for you to share more of your personal story with us. I think it has we have some really common themes and stuff that we can relate to, or that common mindset that sometimes we have around weight and food, especially with dancers who, are more into the pre-professional world. Let me turn this around here. You know what? I need to stay like this. Don't get dizzy. Yeah, so you're a coach, a writer, a teacher, an intuitive, and you might have the opportunity to kind of tell us a little bit more about what that means. You're a former professional ballet dancer with San Francisco Ballet, right? And also the San Francisco Opera Ballet lines. Mm-hmm. And you have a lot of experience in the professional ballet world, which some of our viewers might relate to. And you're going to be talking to us about some of your younger years. I appreciate your willingness to dive into some of that, because sometimes we don't always want to go back and dive in.
It was a long time ago.
It was a long time ago. Yes. So you started dancing at the age of 3, which I hear is pretty common in ballet.
Definitely. Yeah. I mean, I actually started when I was 3, and so did my sister. I have a younger sister as well, and when she got a little older, she started into it as well. So we were sort of a dancing family. But yeah, 3, and then I actually didn't like it at all. And my mom had pulled me out, and then we went and saw some performance of the local, I grew up in Los Gatos, and there's a wonderful, it was called Los Gatos Academy of Dance, and we went to see a performance, and I wanted to dance again. So my mom put me back in, and I probably was 5 and doing little chopsticks and things like that,
Oh, that was the best. That's the best.
What we all do.
Yeah.
I don't know. I just liked it. I think, I look back, I liked the stability of it. Actually, I think a lot of this is a common thing as well. That dancers kind of like the routine, that discipline and sort of really getting into the, I don't know. To me, it's called like now I would say an intimacy of your movement, and at that time it was probably perfection of technique. But
yeah, I don't know. I didn't fall into that.
Yeah,
as soon as I stepped up to the bar and they were like, "There's a right and wrong way to do this," I'm like, "Ooh, I'm gonna be perfect."
Yes, it completely, it was like, but it's such a stable place in an odd way. And I think that,
yes, it is.
There is like a beauty in that. I mean, that routine of stepping up to the bar, which I miss. I don't do that any longer, but, and putting your hand on the bar, and you start, and every day you step up. And to me, I have a very strong, Kundalini yoga practice. So I come to my mat every day. So I think but that's still a real nice reflection place, that bar. You're just like, my hand on the wood right there.
Yes. And I remember feeling that sense of, bringing my entire self, like my mind, my body, my spirit, and being fully present. Because you can tell as a dancer when you're going through your combination and your body is just not connected to your center and your mind, and everything just feels really discombobulated. So yeah, that must be, and I think it's good for people and just in general, and for younger people to have that consistency,
Mm-hmm.
and that stability, because life can seem really out of control and just everywhere. But in dance, they have a structure to it.
Yeah, and that's what I was gonna say is I think there's a little bit of I know for myself, I can't speak for everyone, a little escapism, like you didn't
Oh
have to worry
yeah.
about your homework, you didn't have to worry about maybe whatever was happening in your family home. You just could kind of drop in and start working on something that felt like
Mm-hmm.
you could work on and really
Yeah.
make progress on it. So
Dance can be very good for your mental health.
yeah, yeah. I think there's actually quite a bit, alongside, we pull out a lot of things that are maybe not the best attributes that dancers may have, and that are kind of put into, play in the dance world. But I think as far as an appreciation for the routine and really walking in and honing a level of commitment, I think is quite amazing for dancers. And I think that they may not even honor it as much as they could, because it's so normal. You just walk in and you do your thing.
That's right.
But
That's right.
there's really a beautiful appreciation for the amount of energy and effort that goes into the craft itself. Yeah.
So you danced throughout your younger years, and then once you hit your teen years, I read your book, Mindfulness for Dancers, by the way, it's incredible. And a lot of the, you're welcome. A lot of the questions that I have for you today are just expanding on some of the things that I learned about you. One of the things that you mentioned was once you hit your teen years, things started to get more stressful. You talk about needing to kind of fit this ballet body type, or having that pressure to sort of fit into this mold. You talk about disapproval at a really young age, a very tender age. You say that that during tender age it led to the body image and weight struggles. And another thing that really stood out to me is that you talk about the lack of clarity at that time in your life, and that this is a huge issue in younger adolescents, and it's really common because that's kind of the phase in life. So how did that lack of your identity and not knowing who you are contribute to starting to struggle with the weight and the body image and try to control that? How did that come about?
Yeah, I mean, I really, in thinking back to that time period, and recently, just in prepping for our talk, I was really blown away by how complex that time period really is. And I happen to have a teen. He's a boy and he's not a dancer, but I see it in his friends, and I think that it's so common to the time period that you have, I remember being, having my school friends and starting to have boyfriends. And then I also went up to pre-professional school in San Francisco, and and then schoolwork, you're kind of getting input from everywhere. And at least for me, it was hard for me to be really just single-minded, because I felt like, oh, well, but I have all these friends over here and here and here. And yet I was relatively talented. So I think with my weight, that was kind of the main thing I couldn't really ever get a handle on. And I kept getting asked repeatedly to lose weight. And I tried very, very hard. So hard.
Where did that pressure come from? Was it your teachers? Was it your peers? Was it an inner voice?
I mean, not my peers. My peers, we were all sort of struggling in some way, where everyone had a different body, not image, but body type, right? So in those days, it's different now, I believe, that there is more support in this way. But I think, I tried to just do the diet my best friend was doing, and that really didn't work for my body type.
Right. So what did your what did your coping with the weight, what did that look like for you on a daily basis? Not to
Really
get
like,
too specific into behaviors, but
okay.
yeah.
It's okay. I mean, this is so long ago too. And I think I was bulimic, that I really did that for not very long period of time, but like, and like, I think my friends, we were all restricting our food. It was like, you wouldn't eat and then you would eat. And I think, in that window of time, that was kind of, we were all doing something. I don't think anybody was, some people were better at it than others. I don't think I was very good at it, if we're
Yeah.
talking about really getting my weight down for what I wanted to do.
Well, I'm
So,
glad you weren't.
yes,
I'm glad
yeah.
you weren't good at it. And that mentality, and I want to hone on that comment you just made, because there's this mentality like, can I succeed at this? And the eating disorder says, if you're good at this, you're good enough. And it's like, that is not true. But it is, I failed. I remember I failed in my eating disorder. I was like, I can't even have an eating disorder, right? It was just like, why would you want to?
Totally. And
I think
there's a mindset of, I had also, and I think this is very common, with sort of this perfectionistic thinking, you compartmentalize everything and you're like, well, I'm good at this, and this, but right here, I'm not good, I'm failing. And, so that might be like, maybe my technique was fine, maybe my artistry was fine, whatever it is. And then you're sort of really highly attuned and focused to this one aspect to you, that you kind of can't get on top of, or you can't get control over. And I do think my teachers talked to me a lot. It just didn't, I feel like there was always this gap in there, of like a support. And what I recently was thinking is like, one of the reasons I do what I do for a living, as a life coach and a healer, and really even writing the book, I want to be the person's support. Like, if that's through the book, like, I want to be like the little person in your bag going, hey, it's okay. And I think it's because I didn't have that, I do think that nobody was at fault or anything like that. And I just think that the information at that time period too probably wasn't as much as it is now. And I'm hopeful most dance companies and schools have now a nutritionist and that's all in place.
Do you think we're talking more about mental health than we did before?
Yeah, I mean, I think that there's a lot of avenues now, but I still feel like people, it's everyone has to do it themselves. No one can make you a dancer. No one can do these things. It's got to come from within. But I do think there's a little bit of a little gap in there that I think is like a support system that may come from learning holistic tools, may come from having a coach, a life coach, you can have a ballet coach.
Sure.
There's just this little person that motivates you not to succeed, but to actually, to self-care, to self-healing, to being more in a more, less of a pressure cooker space that is.
I don't know. I've never been in one of those.
Well, and that's the interesting thing. It is a certain quality and mindset that dancers naturally have, actually. And it doesn't leave you. You don't just leave dance. And then I do work with a lot of mature, former professionals, and that doesn't leave us. We still push. We still, kind of have this pressure within us to be very good at what we do. And I don't think that's a bad thing. I really think it's flexing a different muscle of appreciation.
Yes.
And learning new tools to just get you, in your day, you can calm down, you can relax a little, to really feel yourself see yourself more clearly, I guess. So I don't know if that's your question, but
yeah, well, and the next thing that comes to my mind is, so here you are, pre-professional dancer, you're in this environment, you're not really getting the support that you may have wanted. So a little bit more of a personal question. what was your family's response or to this? Did they see it? Did they suspect something? What?
I don't think that they, you know, it's hard to say. My family has always been very supportive of me as a dancer, but I also think there's a fine line with that. They try their best, but then they also want to see you succeed too. So I don't know that the advice, and then they also, I don't know, in my family, and I've heard this a lot in other families, it's like you're a dancer, and sometimes parents are excited for you, but then they also are like, oh, but you won't do that, even if you're really talented. Oh no, you can't do that for a living, so there is always this sort of back and forth as the parent. And I understand, I am a parent now, and you want your children to
it's really hard to find that balance, especially when I moved away from home at 14 to study pre-professionally. And, I was very driven. I was like, this is what I'm going to do, and actually you mentioned in the book, in the training, it was competitive and stressful. And it was like this pressure to plan out your life. And you were 16 years old. And it is, they'll ask you like, is this what you want to do? I remember the talk with Petrus Bosman from the Royal Ballet. And he's like, is this what you want to do? Because you got to decide now.
Yeah.
Because this is where it begins. And of course, here I am, no clue about, what it really entailed.
Yeah.
And I was like, yes, I want to do it.
I think everyone would say that. I mean, I love to dance, and it was something that I really, really loved to do, and I loved everything about it. I think it was still difficult for me at that time to, say, and I knew I wanted to do it for the rest of my life, but I also didn't. I think there's just, again, it's like deciding where you're going to college, or, it starts so early, and there is a pressure in there that you don't even know what you're actually saying yes to, like you're pointing out. I also don't think, and this is another thing that that just sort of popped into my head, was that I also think that the weight thing was such a kind of large issue for me in that time period, that I also didn't know if I was going to be able to maintain a low weight for such a long period of time. Yeah. So, I mean, even over the course of my dancing career, I left dance, I came back to dance, I left dance, I came back to dance. I mean, it was very much a love. I wouldn't say hate, but I definitely was, the pressure would get to me, and then I would leave and I wouldn't do it. And then I would come back. Yeah. I was fortunate enough to be able to get my body into shape pretty quickly and things like that. But I think, for me, really that pressure, it was, and I think we all handle pressure differently. And I would say some people really handle pressure in that it excites them and it gets them going.
It's a motivator.
I have a child like that.
Okay. Yeah. Because some people do. They like that. It fuels them, and they perform really well under that. And I think maybe sometimes that separates people from, do you want, because pursuing a ballet career, there is going to be a lot of pressure, and some, that a lot of people are like, I don't really want to, I'm not really into that. I love to dance. I'll do something, of course, I'm not to say there's no pressure in any of the other forms of dance. But there is this intense pressure to perform, to keep up, to, competition.
Yes.
Keep very competition oriented. And you mentioned that you likely used preoccupation with body size and weight to protect yourself rather than deal with the emotions and the fears. I mean, I'm taking your words and I'm turning them back.
I know. It's funny.
And so walk us through that. You mentioned that preoccupation to protect yourself rather than deal with the emotions. How did that work for you?
Well, I don't know that it worked so well, but
how'd that work out for you?
Yeah, I don't know that it worked that well. I think Yeah, I mean, but I think that goes into what we're talking about in that protect myself from, I didn't really know if I could maintain, let's imagine I had really dropped my body weight to a place that was what was expected of me. I really don't think that I could have maintained that. Like it could have been a one-time deal. And
Sure.
then, so I think there was a fear that once you're in, then you're in it for a really long time. So there was a longevity thing for me that I was like, oh, I don't know that I could do that. I also think that again, and again, this is a little personal. I think it wasn't, I loved to dance and I really actually, was pushed a lot and supported by my instructors and things like that to continue going. But I do think that, and I didn't really know anything else. I didn't know that, how else to, like, that's just what I did, but I wasn't exactly sure. Maybe that really wasn't what I wanted. I didn't know. And I am a person who, now I know myself a lot better, but
Yeah.
I do like to have a lot of freedom in a certain way. And I do think maybe classical ballet, because I did move into contemporary ballet, but classical ballet was just, it was very tight. Yet I absolutely loved, I loved it. So anyway, I mean, I don't, again, it's just one of those time periods where I think food, if it's placed in front of you or you're not, you're not rising up to that challenge, I think there's a heavy disappointment that comes with that, that I think I still probably feel a little bit, just that like, wow, wow, I couldn't do what one thing, or I couldn't do, but it really in that's, sort of like hindsight. But at the same time, I think that is the support. It's like no one can do it for you, but I do think there's a support piece in there it's very subtle. It's not a big thing. So,
Thank you for that. You mentioned your inner voice, not being able to hear it. So in the book, you were talking about how you weren't able to really connect and hone in to your inner voice. And you even mentioned or described it as you didn't know what it sounded like. So if you had known how to connect with your inner voice, would it have changed things for you?
I think it would have given me a little bit more of a spaciousness, like instead of this pressure cooker feel to like get everything, I don't know, dialed in to move forward with what was expected. I think it would give a little more spaciousness. There is something that comes with knowing how to, what I call drop in. Those that are into meditation kind of know, but you can do that within a minute. I mean, there is a way to ask yourself what's here now and just go in and take 3 breaths, and you can, on a scale of 1 to 10, you can actually figure out how am I even feeling? How is my body physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually, meaning energetically? And I think even just that little tool helps to, like, we never take a moment to see, wow, maybe I'm really upset from my day. Maybe I felt, I had a conversation with a friend that upset me and I just sort of pushed it down. There's a lot of things that we don't really even take a minute to see how we're really doing. What's here now? How am I really feeling? And I think learning that kind of a tool is helpful. I don't think it takes everything away. I think there's still, but I do think those kinds of things, if you could kind of decompress each day rather than the buildup of pressure, even on the nervous system, I think that could be invaluable. Yeah.
And do you think that if studios and companies incorporated that into the training, incorporated those supports and that conversation? I taught ballet for a little while, and I really wanted my dancers to feel themselves in their body, connect with where you're at right now, where emotionally, mentally, because I think that comes out in our dancing as well. But it's good for, we focus so much on physical when it comes to dance and training. But I have found the most beautiful performances are the ones where you can just see that dancer is just manifest their spirit.
Yeah.
And
Her
it's
artistry.
moving, and it in there, and you can tell the difference between just technique and that brilliance and that vibrance that's someone who is spiritually, mentally, and emotionally connected in their body. Our bodies, are obviously our tool, our art, and
Yeah.
but a lot of times we get the dance world, might promote that, our body's the focus, our body's the focus, our body's the focus. I remember I felt that, and I didn't really, similar to you, I really didn't know that I had an inner voice, and that I
Yeah.
could talk to it. Now I know. I'm like, but nobody talked about it. Nobody was like, well, you can have a conversation, and you can actually listen to your body, and it will talk to you.
Yeah. That's
And so
it's so simple to just slow
it
down.
is.
I mean, you can
It
lay on the
is. Slow
floor.
down.
I talk about it with my book. I created a video series to go along, and I give some different tools. And
Yes.
you just lay on the ground in Shavasana, and like you're already resting. We never rest as dancers. We never really stop. We're always thinking about choreography, or just even stretching. We're always just on, even when we're not dancing. And I think in this video series that I did, that there are places to just put a few different tools in, and you may be just saving yourself so much, and you're also really opening up that heart center. And I think that's kind of, again, as an intuitive and a healer, I also, this holistic integrative lens and tools, I think are so important. And I also think it's, you kind of brought up that I think it's actually teachers as well. The way that they speak to their dancers, because it is very external. A lot, we talk about artistry, but it is a very, ballet specifically is very externally focused. How high is your leg, and how's that? That's fine. That's part of the discipline. But I think we're missing a huge place to drop in that actually also develops your artistry. It does two things at the same time. But
it's scary to drop in, really, in a sense, because when you're asking someone, hey, sorry I interrupted you.
Yeah, no, I was going to say, yes, I think it can be. But I think if you are given something to hold on to, again, like a little scale, or a little question to ask yourself, or a little guidance, or a certain breath work, I think there's certain ways that are so simple. But it really is flexing this appreciation muscle that helps with that perfectionism, that critic voice. It's that we constantly are a little bit over in this critic voice and this perfectionism of trying to get better and better and better.
Right.
And we really never flex this sort of appreciator. It's like the achiever and the appreciator. And the appreciator doesn't get much of a go. So I think it's learning how to flex that. It's a muscle. It takes practice and habit. And I think it's also coming from the teachers, the way that they talk to the dancers, and they kind of say, wow, this is really great, but let's do this. So anyway.
No, I love your response. And, when I think about eating disorders, I think about the disconnection that comes with that, just from my own experience with, dancing pre-professionally, suffering a spinal injury, not being able to dance again, and then developing the eating disorder to cope with that, because I didn't have any other tools. I didn't have any other narrative. I was at this blank slate. And I think, the disconnection that comes from our body, whether it's disassociation, oftentimes there are other things going on in these young dancers' lives, and even, you know, adult dancers, that are contributing factors to developing these preoccupations. They are there for a reason. They're serving some sort of a purpose. And so I just want to validate those that are like, what do you mean you want me to get connected in here and inside myself? Because there's so much hurt in there, or fear, and the last thing that I want to do is connect with that. Well, what would you say to a dancer who's in that space?
Wow. Well, you know, I would hope that they were also, if they weren't, I would hope that they were seeing a therapist to help them. But I think as far as learning to, let's say, drop in, there are, like, again, there's some starting points. Like, even in class, if you are, you know, you do a combination and then you walk back and someone says, oh, wow, that looked great, and you dismiss that, that's a really great opportunity to actually start flexing your appreciator muscle, to just even say thank you and say, wow, I may have done a good job. So I think there's other little tiny baby steps in that no one should ever be afraid. Like, my biggest thing, at least with my clients, and you know, it's interesting because a lot of people have fear of becoming more intuitive and dropping in. So about what they might find. And it's like, yeah, I really hear that, right? Like, I get it. But there are baby steps. You know, it's half of your body. So it's half of your psyche that you're, you know, working with here. And there's just so many little steps, you know, that you don't have to ever feel afraid, because no one's ever going to take you anywhere, you know, that you are not ready to go. So again, like laying on the floor in Shavasana, or just even taking a moment to say, wow, how am I feeling on a scale of 1 to 10? Taking 3 simple breaths. You know, those are actually in. Yeah. They're very simple.
Simple.
Yeah.
Yeah. It doesn't have to be this huge thing. We overthink, don't we?
Overthink, and we think everything has to be this mammoth change. And it's not a very accurate space to sit, for one. Because like baby steps are like how you get anywhere. And so even into the external world, it's so safe, and so can be such a guided, safe space. Like, even using, I think in our new subscription that's coming out in March, we have like a lavender essential oil. You know, I mean, that's a good to comforting yourself. That's appreciating yourself.
Yes.
So I think that people think it has to, you know, you got to dive deep, because that would be that perfectionism, or that perfectionistic. It's like, oh my gosh, it's like all or nothing. No, actually, we're missing an entire space in there that is quite like comforting, and it's filled with a lot of self-care.
Yeah. You actually said something really interesting because in your book you'd mentioned a tune that dancers, the most common characteristics of dancers, one being this high attunement to the inner voice of perfectionism. You know, and I like the high attunement. That's a very nice way of saying it. That's a very nice way of saying yeah, I love my, you know, and this inner voice of perfectionism. So I know that's part of the reason why you're doing the work that you're doing, is kind of steering them away from maybe that to more of their own inner voice. And that's a lot. There's much more in the book and in your video series, which is an extension of the book. So tell us about this video series.
I basically, I had a couple individuals actually went and taught the book, and I helped them craft it, bringing in their own information, and it went really well. And there was a lot of beautiful work with the blending. And then I sat back and I was like, well, I think I need my voice too to go along with the book. And so I created this video series, and it goes through each each whole chapter, and I always give some type of a guided imagery or breath work tool. And then I also have a self-care concept. So I talk about like the critic voice and the appreciator. You know, it's a 50-50 run right there. And we always flex more of that critic voice, and that, you know, so it's learning those things. And then I just kind of walk people through with my own, you know, my own, a little more information than I put in the book, I would say, so that they can always have, like, again, a support. Like, you can go to my videos and you'll see me, I guess.
Yeah.
Right there.
Here I am.
I know, here I am.
Yeah.
Sometimes that helps. I know for myself, you know, I do a specific yoga practice, but like, I love the teacher. It's been recorded previously, and I go there and it's very calming. I mean, that's a baby step in. I mean, you know,
yes.
It's just actually allowing yourself to not feel the pressure cooker, to allow yourself to give yourself love, you know, and you may not know how to do that actually. But the little devotional pieces really help. Yeah. It's a muscle that we don't always use.
Well, and I had just had a conversation with my daughter. I have a 14-year-old daughter. She's not a dancer, but she's still going through a lot of, again, the common themes that a lot of the adolescents are going through. And she told me that, you know, Mom, I really think that if I accept myself first, then other people's opinions and their acceptance of me won't matter as much.
Yeah. And that's brilliant. I know.
This deep, like,
is very wise. This generation
I'm like,
wise. Yeah.
And so with the dance training and those messages that are coming that to you, whether it be about your technique, whether it be about your body, or, you know, you as a person, even, it's like when you can find that inner voice and that identity, even if it's not like, this is exactly who I am and I'll be that rest of my life, which isn't true. Right? It's just like, this is where I'm at now.
What you're talking about is what again, I keep calling it a muscle because it's
I like that. We talk about muscles. Yeah.
And this, what we'll call the appreciator, but that is what actually will carry you through your life. I mean, when we started, we were talking about how we still carry a lot of our, you know, qualities from being a dancer. It's just maybe now we've learned to flex the appreciator a little bit more, or have different tools. And I think there's many of us, you know, the Healthy Young Dancer Project, the, you know, Mindfulness and Healing, your site, we're all here to really just open up an awareness, but really more of a support. I think we're all here like, hey, we're here. Let's, you know, come on in and we'll do whatever.
Here you are.
Can, you know?
And creating space. You know, I think a lot of the work that you're doing, the work that I'm doing, is just creating space for dancers to learn, to drop in, embrace their authentic self, the idea that they even have, and you know, a self that is, you know, some of those emotional boundaries, a little bit like, I am me, I am not you, you know, or like, you know, it's just, we sometimes just take in everything. And I like, you know, the things that you're doing about, you know, and encouraging people to step into their inner wisdom and healing potential. And this is just some from your website. You empower people, you know, to discover their own integrative, holistic toolbox. And I think what's really, really special about what you're doing is that it's holistic.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, there's so many special things about you. It's incredible. And I want to thank you so much for being that person that you needed. Like, you had this gap. You talked about this gap, right? You talked about that gap. And it's interesting how just your life flow has brought you into the work of filling that gap.
Yeah, and I didn't make that connection until I was sitting with preparing for the this talk because, and I was like, oh my gosh, like I really am holding space for, yeah, and whomever needs support in a way that I didn't necessarily receive. And again, it's sort of an opening. I don't think, you know, we can't fix anyone. It's just an opening. It's a space. And I will say with the new site that I'm creating, Mindfulness for Dancers, the subscription piece is actually, we are now just starting it. It'll be in March, but we want input from people as to what they want to see. We have access. My partner is Lisa Apple, and she's a former principal dancer with Pacific Northwest Ballet. And she's also
God, did I want to be part of that company? That was my like.
we all.
I think everybody wanted to be a PMB.
Yeah. And she was gorgeous. So she, you know, I think, you know, we bring two different specialties to the table, but we also have a lot of, like Stanton Welch is artistic director of Houston Ballet. He's our first spotlight, and he's coming in and doing an interview. And so, but we want it to be supportive for those that want to partake of it. And I think it's sort of this new growth. Like it could be about anything, and we want to be able to support those that know. The teens know. They may not know exactly what they need, but we can get the right, you know, general idea, when we ask people. So yeah, I think it is just sort of, my site is very specific to holistic, integrative tools, kind of Eastern Western tools. But it is because I'm an intuitive life coach and I am a healer. So I've done a lot of work since I left dance. I've done a lot of work and study in that, in the healing arts.
So the website is mindfulnessfordancers.net.
Yes.
And they can learn more about your subscriptions, your coaching, your videos. They can get your book and the videos. I encourage the videos, not only just the book, but the videos, because you do walk people through, and what's really cool too is that it's like more intimate. It's like you and them. It's you. And it's like, here, let's share some space together, and they can watch the video at any time. So that's really amazing. Just to wrap up, for our viewers, if there is someone in a space that maybe you were in when you were young, what would you say to them right now to encourage them?
Kind of I would say almost this, that may sound a little cliche, but like kind of to not give up on themselves. I think, and the way I mean it is, I think that they're probably putting in an incredible amount of energy and effort, and they're probably doing a job better than they can even understand. And because we always underestimate ourselves. And I think that, you know, again, whether they dance and they don't dance, it's not that. It's, again, going in and kind of finding that space, which is difficult to hear sometimes. And so I think really setting yourself up with some support, you know, again, your site, so many different 5-point dancer theory. I mean, there's so many nowadays. I know I have so many friends starting this support network. So this is the time. We don't want to see dancers, you know, lose a little bit of, you know, like falter because of not enough support, I guess.
Yes.
And so I guess, yeah, I would just say, like, don't give up. Like, don't just like let it all go. You know, at least talk to someone, or like, you know, find a website, or find, you know, just something to take that baby step in, I think is imperative. I really think it's so important.
And direct message me, direct message you. You have your own Instagram, Mindfulness for Dancers.
I do.
And I am always open to, you know, people are like, hey, you know, maybe you have something, if you're related to something, or you relate to something that we talked about today, or the work that Corrine is doing, send me a message, send her a message, just say, hey, this is what I took away from it. You know, can I talk further with you about, getting involved or whatever? So we are here.
We're here.
We're here.
We're here. This is
We're
what
here.
we do. Yeah.
And we both, have that similar passion and heart for dancers in particular, because we were there. We've kind of been, living it. So, well, thank you, Corrine. Is there anything else that you want to tell us about your work right now? People, you're encouraging them to go to mindfulnessfordancers.net. Mm-hmm. And anything else that you want to share with us today before we wrap up?
Well, yes, go to mindfulnessfordancers.net and get on our subscription. It'll start March 1st. Mm-hmm. But also contact us. We have contact forms. There's actually comment forms on the site. Mindful Dancer is you can follow us there. And also just, a big thank you to you. You have really opened up such a beautiful space here with this, but even with your work, I think, you, before we got onto Zoom, you were doing some really beautiful workshops, and I think it's only just going to grow and expand. And I just, I am so grateful that I got to connect with you.
Yes, I feel the same about you, and we could continue to just express our gratitude and appreciation for each other all day, right? But we are gonna wrap up, and I do want to invite anyone who says, you know what, I've got some stuff I want to share. Like I got a story or two, or maybe I just have some experiences. So if you want to do one of these live interviews with me, please send me a message. It's really simple. Or write your story. We can put it on our blog. You can remain anonymous if you want more privacy for that. Or you can sign one of your point shoes, share a message, and I can tell you how to get those to me and be part of our photography project. So again, everyone, thank you so much for being with us, for sharing this space with us. I'm going to have this up for other viewers who maybe missed out, or for you to watch again and tune in to some of those particular great golden nuggets of information that Corrine shared with us today. So again, thank you so much, everyone, and I hope you have a wonderful day.